Sharda Narayanan ji back. I think she's ready with her laptop.
Yes, so I'm very grateful for this opportunity that Indica
Please.
has given me. My familiarity with the Tirumurai is more recent, and I think it takes a lifetime to gain any expertise. I have prepared a little bit of. Let me open my screen, sir. So Indica was so kind as to help me announce my first book some years ago also. So I'm doubly grateful. Now I'm getting the second one ready. So why I'm mentioning this is that the first one looks into all 12 Tirumurais. Very briefly, it can only offer a bit of a glimpse. But the ninth Tirumurai is the shortest Tirumurai. It corresponds more to the time of Rajaraja Chola. So there are some textural differences in the way the whole themes are treated. So I have tried to address that in the second book. Now, coming to what is Tirumurai, it is the classical ancient sacred poetry of Tamil Nadu. It is considered the Tamil Veda, and chanting and reciting and singing of Tirumurai is part of ritual worship in Agama temples. 6 times a day during the service, the Oduars, or those who chant the Tirumurai, they offer the verses to the Lord, and it is prevalent in all temples. So here is a quick list of the Tirumurai. The picture, which may not be very visible, shows the Nalvar, or the best known poets of the Tirumurai. Thirugnana Sambandar, his books are the first 3 books of Tirumurai. Thirunavukarasar was the next 3. Sundaramurti Nayanar is 1 book of Tirumurai, that is the 7th. These 3 are music. They are set to music. They were musicians and poets. The other Tirumurais, some of them are only poetry, but today all are sung. I don't want to go into the details of the structure of the Tirumurai. Let us take them as musical rendition of hymns and sacred songs. Now, for many songs of the Tirumurai, there are very interesting anecdotes regarding what was the situation in which the poet visited, which temple was that sung for, and all these details are available for many songs, and these are recorded in folklore and also in the Periya Puranam. Now, close to home where I live is Mylapore. I stay in the adjacent locality. And next week on 2nd April, the Brahmotsavam of Mylapore temple is to start. We are on the eve of the festivities. So I will like to talk a little more about the Mylapore song. And we have a number of different aspects to understand from that song. The history of Mailai itself is very interesting. It dates back to many millennia. Uh, I have researched this a little bit, and I found that during the time of Alexander of Greece, the Seleucus, the Indica, written by Seleucus, mentions Mylapore as Milyarpa. So it was a very prosperous trading port, something like what Singapore is today. Those days we had several ports on the coast of India, both the east coast and the west coast. Mailai and Nagapattinam were very big in Tamil Nadu, and then the ports in Sri Lanka. Pattinam means a trading harbor, a trading port. The Nagapattinam was a very prosperous and big harbor trading post with ships going up to Indonesia. Those were the Naga people. The Pallavas had trade relations and political relations also, and then the Cholas also, of course. But history books say that the trade relations and the sea routes date back to prehistoric times. I think sailors were very good. They knew how to manage the ships, and the Jyotisha, the astronomical knowledge of the night sky, is what helped navigation. And that is what went to Arabia and then beyond in later times. So Mailai was very prosperous and a big bustling trading port. One of the big merchants, and this is recorded in our literature, there was a trader called Shivanesan Chettiar who owned a big fleet of ships, and a very rich man who made a lot of endowments to the temple. And he had a tragedy in his family. His young daughter was about 7 or 8 years old when she was bitten by a snake in the garden while picking flowers, and she passed away. And the father was heartbroken, and he never recovered from the tragedy. And he had preserved her ashes in an urn. And when Tirumurai Sambandar came to Mailai, he presented it before him and wept. And Shivanation Chettiar, there are inscriptions that he had made donations, endowments for oil for Nataraja's lamps in the temple. And he was known to be a philanthropist. And he had arranged for hospitality for Tirumurai Sambandar. When he walked from Tiruvatiyur to Mailai with his group, he had arranged camps for giving shade and refreshments all along the way. So when Tirumurai Sambandar saw Shivanation Chettiar and heard the story, out of sympathy, out of pity for him, he sang this Mailai song. This song mentions all the festivals of the temple, the different months. All Agama temples have different festivals around the year. The Mylapore being in a bustling metro like Chennai, the Mylapore temple is very famous. The festivals are very famous. And around the year, we have festivals, and the Brahmotsavam is the Panguni, that is in the Falguni month, of starting next week. So Tirumurai Sambandar in the 6th century visited Mailai, the Kapalishwarar temple in Mylapore, and he sang this song when he was presented this urn and told the tragedy of Shivanesan Chettiar. I will recite only the first verse, so though I will go over the whole song because each verse refers to a different festival. மத்திட்ட புன்னயம் காணல் அமட மயிலை கட்டிட்டம் கொண்டான் கபாலீச்சரம் அமர்ந்தான் ஒட்டிட்ட பண்பின் ஒரு திற பல்கணத்தார்க்கு அட்டிட்டல் காணாதே போதியோ பூம்பாவாய். The child was known as Pumbavai, Shivanesan Chettiar's daughter. And the song, the first verse says, there are so many festivals here, so many devotees come, and they are all served food. And are you going away without seeing all this, O Pumbavai? Yes, that is it says in beautiful Mailai, which has seashore gardens of mastwood trees, the Punnai Maram is a coastal tree. There were big groves of the Alexandrial laurel, it is called, on the seashore around the temple, which Tirumurai Sambandar mentions. He says those groves were pouring with nectar, and Kapalishwarar is also known as Punnaya Vana Nadar, that is the lord of the Punnaya Grove. Now, these become important to us later. That is why I'm mentioning it. And the idea that during Utsavams, the Rudras, who are the various deities, and the Shivaganas, and the Yakshas and Gandharvas, everybody is said to come to take darshan of the Lord, and they are said to come in the form of the devotees who come to worship Shiva. So they are all given food, the prasadam of the temple. Even today, during the Utsavam, the roads around Mylapore temple, it's like all roads lead to Rome. It will be full of devotees, groups of devotees walking towards the temple, and they will be dressed in lots of strings of Rudraksh and Vibhuti, and they will actually look like the Shivaganas. The second verse refers to the Aipasi Onam festival, which comes around August, September. And the song describes both Mailai and refers to the festival at that time. And no other song in the early Tevaram songs describes any urban center as splendorous as Mailai. Says it was very prosperous with a lot of brightly, gaily dressed ladies. The third verse refers to the Kartikai festival of lights, where lamps are lit in all the homes and along the compound walls. The whole town will be full of lights after dark. Tiruvadurai is the holiest date in the calendar of the Nataraja worship. And it comes in the November, December, when Chennai has heavy rain also, where there are a lot of thick clouds rolling into the sky. So Sambandar mentions that. And he says, do you go without seeing the special Adurai festival? The Thaipusam is very famous. Even in Malaysia, it is very famous, where lots of devotees come and congregate to the temple, both Murugan temples and Shiva temples. So he talks about the Thaipusam festival that comes in January in the 5th verse. In the 6th verse, he refers to the Masi Kadalatal, that is when the deity goes to the water, either a tank or a river. In this case, it is the ocean. Also, all the deities, all the devotees also go in for the ritual worship dip in the water. And he mentions that Kapalishwarar is very happy. He delights in looking at the hordes of devotees who come in the Masi festival also. Again, he says, Pumbavai, you are going without seeing all this. The Panguni Uttaram is the finale of the Brahmotsavam that happens, and there is a lot of festivities of music and dance. And Tirunjana Sambandar says, do you go without seeing this? In the Ashtami, in the Chitra month, is again the another festival. In the 8th verse of every song, it is Tirunjana Sambandar's habit or his style to sing of Ravana. Usually, the 8th song of every hymn has a reference to how Shiva subdued Ravana's arrogance, and it also celebrates Ravana's devotion. So both go together in those verses. And then the 9th one talks of the Golden Swing Festival. So the songs talk about these, and then they talk about both Mailai and this. It talks about how Brahma and Vishnu could not fathom the greatness of Shiva. It is that burning flame, column of flame episode. And then there is also usually the 10th verse, there is a reference to the Buddhist and Jain onslaught on the Shaiva religion. So there is always a reference to that. Many scholars have analyzed and written about this, including Professor Nagaswamy. And scholars who study the literature all say that he has never condemned the Buddhists or the Jains. Sambandar only condemns the fact that they condemn the Shaiva devotees. So this is another point. And then there is a Pavitrotsavam is referred to in the 10th. And the last verse of every Sambandar song is called the Kadai Kappu or the benediction in the last verse. Sambandar is said to be a avatar of Murugan to revive Tamil music and literature. In the 5th and 6th centuries, from the 3rd centuries onwards, Tamil literature and music suffered. And there was a heavy onslaught on the very austere religious influence of the Jain, mainly the Jain and a little bit of the Buddhists also. So it is Samandar who revived that with his beautiful songs that celebrated devotion and bhakti to Lord Shiva, always promising a good life, as opposed to the austerity of the previous outlook. That helped the people revive their motivation, their interest, and revived the arts. Now, I want to mention that there are a few things that we have to learn from the song, other than just the music and the devotion, and the references to the many festivals that are very important, of course. The point is that the current temple in Mylapore is not the temple that Samandar visited and sang at. The official website of the Kapalishwara temple, and even as you enter the main gate, the Rajagopuram, which we see, the large Gopuram in the background, as you enter, there is a stone inscription says that in English and Tamil, it says that this temple was rebuilt in the 16th century. So it is about 450 years old. But Samandar visited this 1300 years ago. So then where was that temple and why was it? I want to mention this because in the current situation in Madras, in Tamil Nadu, in the media and in the general public domain, there is a lot of denial about this issue. There are several views. Some people say that it was on the seashore and then it got washed away in a tsunami, and that is why it is rebuilt here. Some people say that it is rebuilt right here in the same location. Some people say that it is not even rebuilt and it has always been here. But then there are records that say, government records say that it is rebuilt, etc. So I had gone into a little bit of research on this issue. And I did check government publications of some decades ago regarding temples in Tamil Nadu, and the writings of people like J. Mohan and K. M. Balasubramaniam. Some of them write in Tamil. And I tried to explore this. And it says there is this book on by Ishwar Sharan also. He also gives a lot of references and gives the history of this, because this history is not well known in the current situation. My own family did not know. My family hails from Chennai, but they did not know that this temple has been rebuilt. So the point is that when the Portuguese came and they settled in Madras, and they settled to the north of the Marina Beach, where the harbor and the port activities were, they slowly moved forward as they gained in control in economic and political power. They moved southward, and Mailai, which was a port coastal town, was pushed inward. This is what books tell us. Mailai was slowly pushed inside, and as they moved forward, they set up a little tomb outside the temple walls, the original temple, which was built by the Pallavas on the sea coast, probably just south of the harbor. And they said that it was the tomb of a saint and the tomb of Saint Thomas. And then it became a popular pilgrimage area for them. One fine day, when they became strong enough, they broke the walls, they attacked the temple and ransacked all the wealth and things. And a lot of people rose to defend the temple and were killed. But that was when they demolished the building. And the Portuguese records, the historians have written that they demolished the pagodas of Maliapur. So it is there in their records. And they overtook the place. And for a while, there was no Kapalishwara temple. Then the Nayaka kings attacked the Portuguese on Goa and Mylapore simultaneously. They won the war in Mylapore, and it says they extracted a fine also for having demolished our temple. And then they rebuilt it in the premises of the Murugan temple that was already there. There is still a Murugan temple right next to the Kapalishwara shrine. And we can see the architecture, the carvings are more ancient, they are older. And the Kapalishwara temple was reinstated here. And it says that many stones from the old temple were hauled, they were dragged here, they were brought here and used. And there are records of certain inscriptions that are found in certain parts of the temple. But today they are all being plastered and other plaques come up in their place. So they are probably systematically hidden and we are not able to see them anymore. And the books also tell us that in the gardens of the Santom Cathedral, there used to be a lot of carved pillars and carvings. And in recent decades, they have all been removed and kept out of view. But the museum has a few, and the books record the number, the entry number of those objects that were found in the gardens of the Santom Cathedral. And now they are part of the Chennai Museum. And they say that even on the seashore, when the waves have washed out carved pillars that have been found below the sea. So proper systematic exploration to settle the matter is never done. And people just like to not talk about this. But the point is the literary references of two people. Both Samandar in the 6th verse of the song, he says that Kapalishwarar is sitting watching the ocean. So the temple was originally east facing. Today it is west facing. In Ishwaran Sharan's book, he tells us that whenever an Agama temple is rebuilt for any reason, it has to be in a different direction. It cannot face the original direction. Those are the Agama rules. So here we have the new temple built about 450 years ago. It's about a kilometer or more away from the shore. And it is very popular. All the festivals are celebrated in a grand manner. And in the middle of the 15th century, Arunagiri Nadar also visited the temple. Again, he makes reference to Kapalishwara as on the seashore and facing the sea. I had found this map of old map of Madras online, and on the right side I have an enlargement. So here we see what is marked. These maps were made during the British. The year is also given, but I'm not able to see that. This map is about 200 years old. It says Santom or Milyapur. So at one time, these two areas were given, they were known by both names. But today, Mylapur is shown inside. We see that blue square. That is the temple tank of the Kapalishwara temple. On the right side to that, there is a smaller blue square. That is the Chitrakulam. That is then close to another temple. And the Mylapur temple is marked in concentric squares. We have that with a small square marked with two squares outside. So this is the old map where there is a proof that the same area was known by both names, and today they're considered as distinct areas. Unfortunately, most people in Chennai, in the media and the news and the advertisements, they talk of Chennai Day as the day when the British bought the land from the Nayaka kings. So there is nobody wants to go further into the history of this place. And very few people know that it was a thriving place for many millennia. So here we have, this book has a lot of details, and he talks about how the myth of St. Thomas has been somehow made very popular. And what is worse is that the church propagates the theory that St. Thomas was murdered by a Brahmin. So this is very unfortunate because some years ago, the Pope himself had said that St. Thomas has never moved further east beyond Gaza and Palestine. And the biblical records, whatever is available in that language, it says that the description of the countryside there, the palm trees and the sands, they speak of the environs of the Middle East there. Certainly not the coconut fronds and the greenery of Chennai, but this has been, there was another Thomas who fled Syria and came and in a ship and landed on the shores of Kerala in the 3rd century CE. And he was responsible for a lot of conversions, and the Syrian Christian community traces its history to that Thomas, who was different to St. Thomas, who was the apostle. But because of some confusion with the names, which is probably propagated more conveniently, this is a very popular idea in the imagination of the general public. And very few people go into the details of how much of it is based on fact or how much of it is true. We have two very important literary evidences about this, and one is from Tirumurai Samandar's song, and the other is from Arunagiri Nadar. So I wanted to mention that. Moving to a different idea, today we have very little direct connect with music and dance, particularly dance during Utsavams. After the Devadasi Act of the early 20th century, where dance was abolished from worship in all kinds of temple worship rituals, whether it is festivals or daily worship, once it was abolished, and we do not have any video recordings of those days. So although the music is still intact, even among dancers, it is a very big question as to see what type of dance was performed in what utsavam. So there is a lot of gray area there. But I have this one quotation from the book. I think it's not visible because of the full screen share. Maybe now it will come. So she talks about how during the utsavams, in the procession of the deity, before the deity, the dance performances would be there. She talks of the story of Shiva as a Bhikshatana is well known. Doraikannu was one of the oldest, one of the last Devdasis. Her daughter Gauriamma was very famous. She was the last Devdasi, but Gauriamma used to talk about her mother. Doraikannu was married with a number of children, and after a point, she would perform only once a year during the Brahmotsavam. And for that, the temple was still supporting her. So Doraikannu used to look radiant, dressed in a simple, pure white sari, forehead smeared with vibhuti, and Rudraksha beads adorning her neck and wrists when she performed. With the power of symbolism and suggestion, she was momentarily transformed into Shiva himself. So this is what the people, the public would witness. This unique performance took place at a particular spot on each of the 4 grand streets surrounding the Mylapore temple. It preceded the deity's procession. There was intensity and emotion in the air as the story unfolded through the dance. The dance depicted how mesmerized the wives of the sages were when he appeared as a beatific mendicant in the forest of Daruka. People who saw Doraikannu dancing the role felt moved beyond speech. Time seemed to stand still as Lord Shiva himself seemed to have come down on earth to visit this holy spot. Mylapur Gauri, Doraikannu's daughter, would often speak of her mother's dance with great feeling mixed with pride and joy. These kind of literary evidences, written evidences, Lakshmi Vishwanathan had interviewed many Devdasis, and today very few of them are alive, neither writers nor Devdasis. So I thought I would just showcase this because this is a lost aspect of the Utsavams that we are unable to directly see. So it is through books that perhaps we can get an idea what would happen. We move on to a different part of the Tirumurai. There are many references by Samandar, Thirunavukarasar, Sundarar, and many others that refer to temple utsavams. But for my presentation, I will restrict myself to a few samples. They say that the Tirumurai is like a mountain of sugar, and no matter where you pick up a handful, you can taste the sweetness. So this is the popular idea regarding the Tirumurai. Now the ninth Tirumurai has a slightly different setting. It belongs to the time of the imperial Cholas, the 9th century, 9th and 10th century. So we can imagine how the scale, the grandeur just went up. The size of the temples, the standards of music and dance, the endowments, the festivities, the processions, everything was on a much grander scale. And the songs reflect that. So here we have the Chidambaram and then the Tanjavur Brihadishwara temple and the Brihadishwara temple in Gangaikonda Chodapuram. Those are the three pictures there. Um, there is one song that is sung in Tiruvarur. That is, it was composed for the Tiruvarur Swami by Punduruthi Nambi Kadanambi. And he talks about how when he comes in procession, how the Lord is dancing and twisting and turning and nobody can keep pace. And even his close associates who are with him as he twists and turns, that is Umayal, Parvati Devi and Ganga, who are part of his person, even they cannot fathom what his next move will be. So both physically in the dance move and in philosophically the significance, it escapes our understanding. So he's known as the Vidi Vidangan, who comes out on procession, and it says, who can fathom his Ajapa Natanam? This song is on Thiruvarur, and unfortunately, we have only 2 verses of the 10 or 11 left. So, in case there are more references to the procession, unfortunately, we seem to have lost them. The Thiruvisaipa of Kandaraditar was a Chola king himself. He was the brother of Rajaraja's grandfather, and he is known more as a devotee of Shiva than as a king. Unfortunately, he had a very short reign as king also. So that is part of the reason. And he was a great devotee, and he has this beautiful song that he composed that is part of the 9th Tirumurai. It is composed for Koil or Chidambaram. He talks of how Vishnu and Brahma are among the gods and other deities who are thronging the streets, approaching the temple to get a glimpse of the deity during the Utsavams. He says they come in such thick crowds because when we go in the procession, it is a very dense crowd. We are just jostling about, and yet nobody is uncomfortable, nobody pushes. It's just a very thick crowd. But here he says that their crowns rub against each other and the gems and pearls fall off, and the adiyars are the devotees. They sweep them up from the streets in piles. So that is the grandeur and that is the extent to which he talks about this. Kandaraditya's wife was Sembian Mahadevi, who survived him and who is known as a great philanthropist. She made a lot of endowments to temples, repaired and built many temples. And it is said that even Rajaraja was inspired by her life in the way he reigned and he devoted his efforts to the religious aspect. Of course, the Tirupallandu, there is no Utsavam without Tirupallandu. Tirupallandu is the benediction. There is a story about Sendanar also. It is said that he was the treasurer or the accountant of Pattinathu Pillayar, who was another poet. His work finds place in the 11th Tirumurai. It is said that Pattinathu Pillayar belonged to a very prosperous merchant family with a lot of ships that had trade relations with the Far East and probably going around to the West also. We don't know. They were merchants with big merchant ships, fleet of ships. One fine day, he just lost interest in material life and he became a devotee. He gave up everything and he became an adiyar. He just went as a devotee of Shiva. He took the Diksha and went away. And he instructed his accountant to throw open his treasury for whoever wants to come and take whatever they want. So Sendanar was his treasurer, and because he opened up the treasury, people came and cleaned it out. Now, Patinatha Pillayar's wife's family complained to the king. They had a right to complain, isn't it? It was not right that he became a renunciate, but what about the family? They didn't want to lose their fortune. So when they complained to the king put Sendanar in prison. And there is a story. They both prayed. Patinatha Pillayar prayed to Lord Shiva. Finally, Sendanar was released. But he became detached. He became disenchanted with the material life. He took his family and he went to live in Chidambaram. And he had a very, very meager life. He used to make some money by cutting firewood. And that is how he maintained his family. And it says that every day he would make sure he fed one adiyar. Adiyar is a devotee, those wandering siddhas, these mendicants and the monks who are devoted to Lord Shiva. He would find somebody and feed him and then only have his own meal. And many days it was puttu. Puttu is just rice flour cooked with a little bit of sugar or jaggery or good. So it is said that Sendanar was such a great devotee that Shiva used to go and take his prasadam. He used to eat the offering that Sendanar served him as offered to him as the Naivedya. And in one occasion, on the Tiruvadirai procession in Chidambaram, the chariot would not move. And it was after Sendanar came and sang the Pallandu that it moved. And even today, in Tiruvadirai, the prasadam we all offer is puttu. We make that kali, Tiruvadirai kali. It's a very simple dish, just rice flour cooked with a little ghee, and today we add some ghee also. So that is the Naivedyam offered. Again, in the Pallandu, you can read the translation. It's very beautiful. He says the gods all come to serve the Lord, and he talks about the splendorous gathering and the splendor with which the Utsavams are celebrated, and the dancers who are part of the festivities. So he takes Kutoli, Yaroli. He describes the different instruments and the loud music that is done. And he says, Arar Vandar, Amargal. He says, who all have come gathered in the streets? It is Brahma, Vishnu, all the Devas, Indra and Agni. So he says, so this is how we have very clear references to the festivities. He says they throng the streets on Adurai Day, and the place is swarming with hundreds of devas. There is no free space. So that is the kind of situation during the festivals. So I hope I've been able to convey something about the references to Utsavams in the Tirumurai poetry. Thank you very much.
Wonderful, wonderful presentation, Sharda ji. This covers a very different way of covering jatras because it comes from literature. This is the only literature-based presentation. There was the other one based on inscriptions, and all others are ethnography-based presentations or agama-based presentations. So this covers away.
When we look at ancient history that is not easy to access, then the only
Mm-hmm.
two ways are through archaeology and literature. And
Literature,
we have
yes, yes.
to combine them to improve our
Yes,
understanding.
yes, yes. Wonderful, wonderful reconstruction, wonderful recovery of our ancient traditions through literature, ma'am. Let us check if there are any questions. Thank you for information. Question to both Dr. Paturi and Sharda Narayanan. Does the folk jatras also reflect on the role of women in the preservation of nature in the spiritual and social context? And there is another, Ramadevi Shekhar. She must be your friend already. So a question from your friend. Mylapore temple is rebuilt during the process of renovation of mandaps. Many of the temple pillars of Tirusulam temple is mixed up with this temple. In that process, many inscriptions lost, some of the fragmented inscriptions published in Chennai. Mangara Kalavettu, the great composer during 20th century, Papanasham Shivan composed many songs in praise of Karpagambal, like Nayaki Raga, Nan Oru Vilayattu Bommai. He was one in reviving the Margali bhajans amongst Mylapore streets. Oh, this is an additional information. This is not a question. Thank you very much, Dr. Ramadevi Shekharji, for joining us. Such a privilege to have you. Sharda ji, you want to say something?
Yes, sir, she is my friend, and thank you, Ramadevi ji, for the observation. She is an expert in temple architecture and music, so thank you about that. I was only focusing on the temple being on the seashore and the people being in denial about it. Because when you say it was there, if we say yes, it is rebuilt and it was originally there, then people want to know why it was shifted, and then people don't want people to ask these questions. So that is the situation.
Wonderful, wonderful. So I think there are no more questions. One question by Bharti Chibbarji. Does the folk jatras also reflect on the role of women in the preservation of nature in the spiritual and social context? Yes, ma'am. Folk jatras reflect the role of women in the preservation of nature in the spiritual and social context. I have my publications on this topic, how actually the village goddess cult itself reflects view of nature itself as women, and the reason for why all village goddess cults are associated with women as participants. For example, women are the priests, women are the major participants, women are the major worshippers, and the form given to the village environment also is a woman form. So that explains why women as preservers of nature is reflected, a kind of eco-feminist perspective is reflected in village goddess worship and the jatras. Bharti Chibbarji, thank you very much for this question, Dr. Bharti Chibbar.